You've probably heard this phrase so many times that it may not mean much to you anymore. Everything starts in the mind. 4 words, simple, direct, and yet so often misunderstood, so often reduced to the emptiness of clichés, repeated in books, seminars, social media, as if it were some kind of magic button that, when pressed, would suddenly change your whole reality. But deep down, maybe you feel like nothing has really changed, that even when you try to think positive, you still feel that weight in your chest, that exhaustion in your soul, a pain that doesn't go away with pretty words. And then, you blame yourself. You think you're doing it wrong, that maybe it's your fault. But what if the problem isn't you? What if the real problem is that this phrase has been stripped of its true meaning? What if, instead of being a self-help trick, this expression holds a deep spiritual truth, powerful enough to change not just your thoughts, but your very essence? Brian Tracy once said, "You become what you think about most of the time." But long before that, the Bible had already revealed, "As a man thinks in his heart, so is he." Proverbs 23:7. What you think, you feel. What you feel, you radiate. What you radiate, you attract. But none of that happens through words alone. It all depends on alignment, an alignment between thought, faith, and action. The mind isn't just a factory of ideas. It's a spiritual field, a place where you plant and you harvest, where thoughts can become either prisons or bridges, where a lie repeated enough can become a lived truth, but also where a forgotten truth can be reborn and heal. This video is an invitation to pause, to breathe, to look within, and to restore the true meaning of a phrase that, if understood with the soul, can change not only your life, but the way you see yourself living it. You don't have to carry the weight of thinking you're failing just because you can't think right. What you need is to find your way back to the true place where everything begins, and that place is sacred. The common mistake: confusing positive thinking with a transformed mind. For a long time, they sold you an incomplete idea. They told you that all you needed was to think positive, that if you just put on a smile and said everything was fine, things around you would start to change. And maybe you tried. Maybe you fought to keep your mind positive, even when your heart was in pieces. Maybe you repeated optimistic phrases while crying alone in your room, and still, nothing changed. And that made you question your faith, made you believe the problem was your lack of strength. But in truth, the problem was that shallow promise that confuses positive thinking with true transformation. Positive thinking isn't wrong, but it's not enough either. Because thought without roots is like a leaf blown by the wind. And the Bible never said to think positive. It said to renew your mind. Romans chapter 12 verse 2 says, "Be transformed by the renewing of your mind." To renew is not to cover up. It's not to disguise. It's to change the very structure. It's to replace the foundation. It's to let light in where there was only shadow. And that takes truth. It takes confrontation. It takes presence. The mind doesn't change with pretty words. It changes with awareness, with surrender, with repetition and intention. Because the thoughts you repeat most aren't just ideas. They become pathways. And those pathways shape your decisions, your emotions, your behavior. You can say you believe in something, but if deep down you carry the belief that you're not enough, that belief will overpower any fleeting thought. There's a difference between a superficial mind and a transformed mind. The The superficial mind pretends, escapes. It settles for the temporary. But the transformed mind? It dives deep. It faces what's real. It opens itself to the process. And in that deep dive, true change begins. Because it's not about positive thinking. It's about thinking with purpose, with faith, with awareness of who you're becoming. Thinking not to escape the pain, but to heal it. Not to avoid the chaos, but to walk through it with meaning. Thinking not as an end, but as a beginning. The invisible factor. The mind as a spiritual battleground. There's a war happening inside you. Silent, yet real. Invisible, yet constant. And the battlefield where this war takes place is your mind. It's there that fear tries to silence faith. It's there that doubt tries to smother truth. It's there that memories from the past try to convince you that you'll never be able to start over. And many times, you don't even realize you're at war. You just feel the exhaustion, the anxiety, the confusion. But when you understand that a spiritual battle is raging inside your mind, everything starts to make sense. 2 Corinthians 10 verse 4 reminds us, "The weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God for pulling down strongholds." And these strongholds aren't made of bricks or cement. They're made of thoughts. Thoughts repeated so often they become walls. Walls that block you from seeing who you truly are. Dr. Caroline Leaf explains that thoughts physically shape the brain. They form trails, connections, neural pathways. And every time you believe a lie about yourself, that you're weak, unlovable, unworthy, that lie gains strength. It becomes automatic. It starts to feel like part of who you are. But it's not. These mental strongholds aren't broken by sheer effort. They're broken by light, by revelation, by the courage to stop and ask yourself, what lies have I treated as truth? Because as long as those lies continue to rule in silence inside your mind, the war will go on. No matter how many pretty words you repeat, no matter how many times you smile on the outside, true transformation begins when you realize your mind is not against you, but it is being fought over, and you get to choose which voice will prevail, fear or faith, guilt or grace, lack or promise. Yes, there is a war, but you're not alone in it. And when you start to fight with awareness and faith, you're no longer fighting like someone pretending, but like someone who's finally awakened. Alignment Tool. How to reprogram the mind with spiritual awareness. Transforming the mind isn't about forcing positive thoughts or trying to control what you feel. It's not about erasing memories or pretending pain doesn't exist. Transforming the mind is about healing the roots. It's about revisiting the inner places that have been neglected or abandoned and allowing the light of awareness to touch them. But that light must be applied with gentleness, compassion, and presence. Because the mind doesn't respond to the violence of haste. It opens when it feels safe, when it's seen with truth. The first step is to realize that there's a pattern behind what you think. Nothing is random. Negative thoughts don't just show up. They're the result of beliefs planted long ago, maybe in childhood, maybe in a moment of pain, maybe in words spoken when you didn't yet know how to protect yourself. And these thoughts, repeated so many times, they became structures. They became your truth, even if they were never true. That's why the first step is to identify. Not just any thought, but the root thought, the one that drives the rest, the one behind most of your painful emotions. It might be the belief that you're not enough, or that you'll be abandoned, or that you have to overperform to be accepted. These thoughts often show up as inner voices saying, "You're not going to make it. You don't deserve it. You're not like everyone else." Identifying that pattern is like turning on a flashlight in a dark basement. It's the beginning of freedom. But identifying isn't enough. The second step is to confront it with truth. Not judgment, truth. with compassion. Ask yourself, where did this thought come from? Does it really reflect who I am in God? Does it align with His Word? Psalm 139 says, "You were fearfully and wonderfully made." Isaiah 43 says, "You are precious in His sight." So, why have you believed a story of lack, of abandonment, of smallness? Confronting the lie with spiritual truth is like shining light on a shadow. The lie loses power. It dissolves in the presence of truth. But truth must be felt. It must be brought into the body, because the mind only changes when it feels. Transformation doesn't happen just through reading. It happens when emotion is involved, when you allow truth to drop from your intellect into your heart. And then comes the third step, replace. And this takes practice. Replacing the old mental pattern with a new way of thinking, feeling, and acting. It's done through conscious repetition, through intentional visualization. Close your eyes. See yourself living in peace, in balance. Feel in your body what it would be like to wake up without that anxiety that used to control you. Imagine facing your day with confidence, with lightness, with faith. And more than imagining, allow yourself to feel as if it's already true. Science confirms what spirituality has always known. Dr. Caroline Leaf speaks of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change, to create new pathways, new synapses, new habits. When you practice a new thought with emotion and consistency, the brain begins to believe it's real, and slowly, it reshapes itself, it rebuilds. It's like paving a new road where there was only dirt. With each conscious repetition, that road becomes stronger. But the secret is coherence. Think differently, feel differently, act differently. There's no point in visualizing peace if your life is fueled by conflict. No point in declaring trust in God if your every decision is ruled by fear. The mind only transforms when there is alignment between thought, emotion, and action. That is alignment. That is living truth. An example? A man who, for years, believed he wasn't good enough to prosper. That belief was born in childhood, fed by criticism, rejection, and comparison. He grew up trying to prove his worth, always overachieving, but carrying an exhaustion that never left. Until one day, he stopped. He chose to look at what was behind all that effort, and he heard a silent voice inside. "You'll only be loved if you're perfect." That broke him, but it also set him free. He started confronting that voice with God's truth. He began declaring daily, "I am loved, even when I fail." He visualized himself acting with freedom, with ease. He started treating himself with kindness, resting without guilt, saying no without fear of losing love. And over time, his mind began to change. His emotions began to shift. His life began to transform. This process isn't easy, but it is sacred. It requires surrender, perseverance, self-love, and above all, faith. Faith that it's possible. Faith that the mind can be renewed. Faith that God designed you with the ability to reprogram what pain once programmed. And that kind of faith isn't passive. It moves, it acts, it sustains the process. Reprogramming the mind with spiritual awareness is, above all, an act of love. Love for yourself, love for the truth, love for the life you still have the power to live. It's realizing you no longer have to repeat old patterns just because they feel familiar. It's choosing healing, choosing freedom, choosing to align your mind, heart, and spirit with who you truly are. So now the question is, what thought will you replace today? What root are you willing to pull out, lovingly, so something new can bloom in its place? Because the mind only blossoms where truth is planted, and every truth, when felt with faith, has the power to heal. Renewed mind, Aligned life, what will you plant now? The mind is soil, a sacred ground where everything begins. Thoughts are seeds, small, almost imperceptible, yet powerful enough to grow forests or deserts. Emotions are the climate. They warm, nourish, or freeze whatever is being cultivated. And action is the harvest. It's what rises from the invisible. It's what becomes visible when you choose, day after day, what you'll allow to grow within you. Maybe for a long time you've been sowing doubt, scarcity, discouragement. And today, you feel like something inside you has withered. But now you understand. The world doesn't need to bloom first. Your inner world does. It needs to be replanted, renewed, reminded of its origin. Everything starts in the mind. But it doesn't end there. The mind is just the beginning of a deeper alignment. Between what you think, what you feel, what you believe, and what you choose to live. The mind isn't just where everything begins, it's where everything repeats or transforms. And today, that quiet choice calls to you to keep repeating the same tired truths, or awaken to the truth that sets you free, to react the same way, or to act like someone who's reconnected with their essence. 1 Corinthians 2:16 reminds us, "But we have the mind of Christ." This isn't some distant promise, it's a present calling, to see as he sees, to feel as he feels, and to live with the awareness of someone who carries a greater purpose. And if this message stirred something inside you, if at any point you felt like something unlocked in your heart, then maybe this is the confirmation you silently prayed for. This message may have been the answer to that prayer. And if it was, don't ignore it. Stay connected. Be part of this space of reconnection, truth, and transformation. Subscribe to this channel. Here, every word is an invitation to healing. Every video is a seed of faith, courage, and rebirth. Because in the end, everything starts in the mind, but it blossoms in the soul. And now, the question remains, simple, deep, alive. What will you plant in your mind from this day forward?